Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for joining us today. Confidence for me is something that, some people sort of say, oh, well, you're just naturally confident, or I have to build my confidence, I have to work on my confidence. And, I think there's a little bit of truth in all of these different points of view. One of the first things I'd like to go to is one of our reflective questions. And I'd like to ask that question, which is the first one being, what builds your confidence? Has anybody got any thoughts on what that might be?
I can start if
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
yeah, just for a second. For instance, in my case, so if we are talking about like, because confidence is really like, this is, as you have already mentioned, like this is something that's very important in the classroom for us as teachers, but even in more general terms in our life as well. So if we narrow it down to the classroom, so what builds my confidence, for instance, is having a plan, not necessarily a second by second, but just knowing what I'm working towards, and knowing what we are going to work on, knowing my students, for instance, knowing the environment, and also like believing in myself. I think when I lose my confidence a little bit, then I try and change my focus and tell myself that I'm there to guide others, to help others. So instead of like fear focused on service, or how you can help those who are there to be guided.
Okay, that's very interesting. And then, so do you think then that it's something you have to actively think about for you to actually sort of create that confident persona?
It depends. I mentioned it in the chat room at a point that I don't think that confidence works like a slight light switch, like
Sure.
it's either on or off. I
Yeah.
think it's more on a continuum.
Yeah, like a
And
sliding scale sort of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it depends on. So maybe the weather, or my inner chats, or the environment around me. So it's something that I think we need to be self-aware, conscious of what's happening inside, and then take steps. Because I like, if it feels good, okay, I stay with that. If it doesn't feel good, then I need to make changes because I want to feel good. So it's more of a conscious choice. And yes, it's something that we need to, I mean, in my case, I can only talk about myself because I have the joy to spend 24/7 with myself. So I need to be conscious about that. So if something is off, then I will just focus on how I can address that and get out of that. So that's, instead of just staying there I just try and find a way out. So I don't know how it works with others because we are all different.
Oh, absolutely. But we've got quite a lot of interesting comments coming through now. Michael has said that feedback is something that builds his confidence. Now, I think that's really interesting. I know that as a teacher, being in the classroom, for me, and as I said in the presentation, I've got 20 years, more or less, 20 plus now, but anyway, 20 years experience of classroom teaching. And I can feel rocked by somebody observing my class. But equally, when the shoe is on the other foot and I am the observer and I'm going in to do, maybe for an accreditation or whatever the reason is that I'm going in to observe a class, the first thing I do is try and put my teacher at ease and try and sort of, say, oh, don't worry, forget I'm here. I'm not, I'm in no way going to interfere. I'm doing nothing. I'm just taking some notes. And I try and sort of make myself as small as possible so that I don't interfere with the lesson, how it goes. But realistically, I know that, even just the presence of another person is going to do that, of course. So that sort of brings me back. I think Gabby's also said as well, talking about feedback and where it's coming from. Feedback is super important, but I think that two things. One, it's important to know that it's coming from a source that means well and is attempting to sort of build your confidence, build your experience, and sort of build your range, you know, and allowing you to sort of try new things, take risks, etc. And I think that the other thing about feedback is it coming from somebody who's been on the other side of the coin, somebody who has also been observed. So I think that while Michael's bringing this up, I think that's super important. But I do think that it's something that should be kind of threaded through your understanding and your sort of way forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, we got some comment from Barbara, who's on Facebook, listening to us on Facebook, and she's saying that trusting in myself, that builds my confidence. So that's her response to the question. And actually, I agree with you, because, you know, when, like, I think it's something, like, do you think that it's something that we can, is this something, a skill that can be trained? Because I believe so. So when you consciously put yourself forward, like, you know, to experience new things, novelty, you know, then you can just train yourself. Because, to be honest, when it comes to confidence, when we do something for the very first time, I think it's just natural that we do not feel, you know, super confident. You know, if this is the first time, we were not born with those skills, so we build these up. Or I don't know, because at a point you actually mentioned that in your presentation, that confidence is not inherently built in everybody. We aren't just born with it, but we work towards confidence. And what came to my mind, that it is actually experience, that we might have the confidence, but because we lack the experience, you know, we need to build our experience, and the more we experience something, the more confident we will become. So they kind of go hand in hand, in a sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's very true. And I think going back to what you were saying about it being a sliding scale, you know, it's not just I'm confident, yes or no. It depends on so many factors. The factors that we looked at before: experience, personal beliefs, feedback. All of this builds your confidence, and it is a process, isn't it? It's a process that is well, it's built upon every day. And Barbara has said that her students are her inspiration to build her confidence, and that's so important, because when you see your students get the point, or they have the light bulb moment, or they even just they say, you know, thanks as they leave, and they've got a smile on their face, whatever it might be, that's feedback, isn't it? That's feedback. And there's, for me as a teacher, that feeling is, you know, as the hair in the back of your neck stands up, that is so exciting. And I think what Barbara said there is fundamental to the growth and to the evolution of confidence. So it is about, and it's joining in with what Michael said, it is about feedback, absolutely, in that more kind of professional and sort of formal way, but it's also about the informal feedback that you get as well.
Exactly. And I also believe that now that we are talking about confidence, I think we can talk about various types of confidence. Like, we can talk about inner confidence that comes from our programming, probably, so around our value and self-esteem and self-worth. And we can also talk about earned confidence that we gain by doing, and that has various steps. So for instance, when we, like, the step one is when we learn something and work towards becoming an expert in something, and after learning we start applying what we have learned. And then in the third step, you know, when we apply what we have learned, we start getting positive feedback, and that can be exactly that smile on the face of a student who feels more, I don't know, able to do something, and they come to you and say that, oh my God, now I have more understanding about this, I, you know, more insights, I feel more confident as well as a student. And then even it may be like after your lesson has been observed, you may get positive feedback as well. I mean, hopefully.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's all it. And yeah, so
yeah, absolutely. So we've got a question in the Q&A, asking if there are any specific confidence boosters for international students from Africa. Yeah, so who are planning to teach in the UK? Well, I've taught in the UK and for me abroad, so not in the UK. I've also had teachers that I've trained from Africa. And to be honest with you, I give them the same confidence strategies that I give any other teachers, to be honest with you. I think that there are some, for example, I'm not sure, I don't really have much more background of this particular question, but one question that has arisen quite a lot is, what should we do to boost the confidence of teachers who are not native speakers? And this, for me, I'm going to tell you a story, Hedy, and I hope this story is okay. As I said, I have been teaching for 20 years, and I had a conversation with somebody quite recently, and they said to me that, oh, we would love to have somebody like you on our staff, but we won't because of your accent. And I know, and I thought to myself, well, first of all, that's, to me, that's not something, to me now, that's not something that knocks my confidence, because I know that that is not a valid point. To be honest with you. And I say that to my students when I'm doing a teacher training course. Sometimes they feel as if, oh, I'm not a native speaker, I'm not as, I'm not preferred as a teacher. Well, I beg to differ with that. I run a summer school, and as long as you have the experience, as long as you have the qualifications, as long as you have that desire to go in there and teach the students and do the very best you can, then I'm absolutely delighted with that. Native speakers is no longer a thing. Competent speakers, enthusiastic, excited speakers, these are the ones that you want as a teacher. So I'm not sure in the background about coming from Africa, and I'm not quite sure on what the specifics are, but for me, I would take on board the confidence boosters that we've given out today, because for me they're valid whether you're coming from Africa or whether you come from Scotland or wherever you're coming from. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's so nice. And I have another story. That's also happened, I think, in one of our summer schools a couple of years ago. And so I'm a non-native speaker, and I was teaching most probably either an intermediate, upper intermediate class or an exam class. I don't remember it exactly, but at the end of her course, a student of mine approached me, and when she found out that I'm not a native speaker, she looked into my eyes and said to me, "So there is hope." It was so sweet, and said, "Yes, there is. Just go on."
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do not believe in yourself, and and that's another thing. When, for instance, I see someone who is, in my eyes, more competent, better, then I can look at that situation in two ways, like being hard on myself, telling myself that, oh, I'm not good enough, I will never be there. Or I can flip this around and say that, wow, this is a human being with two eyes, two legs, two arms, like you. So, and if he or she has managed to do what he or she is doing at the moment, then there is hope. So you can do it yourself as well. And this is, I think, actually, it's called modeling. So looking at others who are ahead of us, maybe a step ahead or even further ahead of us, and just believe that, wow, once they were where I am at the moment, and just go on working, putting, in the hours and effort, and then once you may find yourself where they are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think also that sort of goes back to, again, what Barbara was saying, with having that sort of inspiration coming from your students. And, if they actually are able to vocalize that and saying something like, what your student said to you, for me, I mean, that's, you know, you don't really need paid then, do you? It's just wonderful, isn't it? It really is. It's just wonderful.
I agree. This can keep, it's like fueling, like
Yeah.
really keep us, it can keep us going. And this is what we need actually, when we see that there is like meaning in what we do. So that's very important.
Yep.
And let me just go back. Oh yes. So earlier in the chat, Gabi had a question that says, how do you feel about teachers who are already confident on the first day of their teaching career? What I often call an overnight confidence.
That's a very, very good question. That's a very good question. I think that I think probably we've all worked with teachers with that sort of confidence level. And that's great. I worked with my first day. I worked with well, my first day in my first teaching job. We all had to introduce ourselves and we all had to say who we are and what have you. And I was probably literally shaking in my boots, probably. And my confidence level was not zero. That was not a thing. Definitely below zero, 100%. And there was this fellow there, and he was from America and the United States of America, and he was super confident. And he was probably about, I don't know, so I was about 22 more or less. He was maybe about 10, 15 years older than me, and he just projected this confidence, and he projected his ability to teach anyone anything at any point. And I was quite in awe of him, I have to be honest with you. So I think that's one side from another teacher's point of view. You can look at these colleagues and you can go, wow, I'll never get to be like that. You can absolutely have that. But then you've got to ask yourself a question. I'm absolutely not suggesting for a second that my colleague was in this category, but you do have to ask yourself, is it a justified confidence? Or is it perhaps one that could be a little bit overinflated? Could it be? I'm not sure. For me, I like to, well, if one of my student teachers is going into a classroom, as I said, in summer school environment, I like to give them as much freedom and as much space as they need to investigate. And quite often, even just after the first lesson, they come out and they say, whoa, wait a minute, things are a little bit different to what I thought they were going to be. And that's absolutely fine. And then I find that that's a kind of a good place to sort of start and, you know, start talking about realistic classroom management and, you know, talking about syllabus and talking about, you know, various different things as far as that's concerned. Because as we've heard, overnight confidence is something that sometimes is fine. It comes from something that is deeper rooted perhaps than in being in a teacher training course. But other times it maybe comes and it's something that it can certainly be molded into something to make that person a super teacher, perhaps.
Yes, and so my question is, what can we do, let's say, before a lesson, even during a lesson when something comes up and knocks us, or after a lesson, just, you know, to get prepared for these moments, let's say. So yeah, let's start with before a lesson. So just to avoid, or we can't really avoid this, but how can we cope? What can we do to be able to respond and stay, you know, balanced and focused? So let's say, what can I do as a teacher before a lesson?
I think that's
when I have those what ifs already in my head.
Sure, no, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the first thing that we have to talk about is this self-talk or this internal chatter. What Where are you with your teaching confidence is the first thing that we have to think about. Do you think that, no doubt, probably I'll go in and I'll trip over a wire, guaranteed, going to happen. Is that how you feel? Well, if that's how you feel, you have to reel back on that and you have to start again. You have to, okay, hang on. If I look in front of me, I will see the wire and I will not trip over it. You know, you have to think from the very, very beginning of these things. If it's a case of I'm not sure about the subject, I'm not sure about the grammar, I'm not sure about the delivery of this particular point, then that's fine. What to do then is preparation. Make sure you read all about it, make sure you have lots and lots of different examples, and don't stray from it. One thing that I see often is teachers who are, for example, talking about the present perfect, and then they sort of stray into perhaps the past perfect, and they haven't quite noticed that they've done that, and so all of a sudden the students have lost the point of what's happening. And so I always say, stay focused. Don't move away from what it is you're actually teaching, and make sure everything you say has that same construction. So if it's the present perfect, or if it's the first conditional, if it's the first conditional, people quite often say things like, what would you do in that situation? Well, you've moved away from the first conditional. So, reel it back and keep it back. And for me, focus is a good place to start as far as pre-teaching confidence is concerned.
Yeah, I agree. So preparation can be key.
Yep.
I think, especially like you mentioned, know your subject for today at least, and knowing the students, and then anticipating problems. Like I would put my what ifs, I would list them as anticipated problems, and would come up with solutions, like, what can I do if it happens?
Yeah.
And okay, so, and let's say that now I'm doing my lesson, I'm teaching, and things come up. Let's say I'm teaching the first conditional, and somebody starts asking me about the third conditional. So what can I do then?
Well, if you're teaching the first conditional and somebody asks you about the third conditional, grammatically speaking, that's a huge jump. And if it's a one-to-one class, then you've got options. I'll come back to them. If it's a group, then your only option there is to be fair to all the participants and to say that's a different grammatical structure. We'll come back to that a different day. We will get to that, absolutely, we will get to that, but today is not that day. So it's really just about setting boundaries, and you're setting those boundaries for many reasons, but the first one is so that the rest of the class, they don't all snowball into confusion and saying, well, I don't understand how this connects with will, for example. If it's a one-to-one class, as I said, grammatically speaking, it's a big jump. So you've got a few different options that you can look at here. If the student is able to make that jump, and you as a teacher, you feel confident you have that, then you can make that jump with them. But I personally would say, well, today I want to make sure we have the solid foundation in the first conditional, and we have that solid foundation so that we can move on, and then there is a process. We can then look at the second conditional, and then we'll get to the third conditional, and then we'll talk about mixed conditionals or whatever it might be. But for me, I would very much keep my boundaries, whether it be a one-to-one or whether it be a group lesson. And I think that's quite, as people, we're quite prone to saying, we don't like to say no. We don't like to say, no, I'm not going, because you think, oh, do they think that means that I don't know the third conditional and I don't know how to explain it? And then all this self-talk comes in and all these doubts start coming in from nowhere. And it's when you say, no, I'm sorry, today's not the day, we'll do that next Wednesday, whenever it may be, we'll do that another time, then all you're doing is safeguarding the progress that your students have made up until that point.
Yeah. And what if there's a question that's valid and that's related to what we are talking about, but I'm not certain about the answer?
Again, that's really not a problem. As I said in the presentation, we're not grammatical encyclopedias. If you're not certain about the answer, don't give the wrong answer. That's the number one rule. If you have to say, oh, I'll come back to you on that, then that's absolutely fine. If it's a perfectly valid question and you're not sure, go and find out and then come back.
And also, like, to be honest, in most cases we have the internet available. We can even ask our students actually that, okay, let's turn it into a competition. Who is the first one to find it online? Just shift the focus away from you and give them the responsibility to answer their own questions. That's also possible, probably.
Yep, no,
So,
absolutely. One of my favorite things to do is to open that up to the group.
That's exactly, and they will, and here this is also part of being confident, so that they will not know, because they will have no idea that I do not know the answer to that question, whether I'm just playing with them. So it's actually, like, I remember I used to have an evening class, and I do not like giving answers away. So I prefer, getting it from the students themselves. So when they ask me a question, I just say, I don't know. I'm not God. I don't have the question, the answers to all questions. And one of the boys really believed me at the beginning that, oh my God, she doesn't know. Again, she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then later on, he figured out that she actually knows. Just she knows when is the best time to focus on that, and the answer will come to us sooner or later anyway. She just doesn't want to give it away. So. And now there's another question from Gabi asking, have you met confident teachers who are not confident people?
That's an excellent question. Absolutely. I have. Yes, absolutely. I have worked with them. Many teachers actually who have, it's almost like they have a persona, a teaching persona. Actually, one of my closest friends, he is super confident in the classroom, and when it came to moving from teaching in the physical environment to moving online, no problem, it's absolutely fine. But if you try and take him out of his comfort zone and you ask him to do something, spontaneous, a bit random, a bit something different, oh, no, definitely not. Oh, he has to plan it all, and that's fine. That's who he is. But his teacher persona would never hint at that. Never once.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Very much. I remember my first masterclass, my legs were probably shaking.
Absolutely, yeah. But then it's normal, though, isn't it? I mean, I remember I had a new job, and it was after I had been working abroad for 10 years, and I came back to Scotland, and I was terrified. I don't know why I was terrified that I would just answer everybody in Italian all the time. I don't know, I didn't. And I had this thought that this is what was going to happen. But, we let these little thoughts go in, and it ends up being that it does rock our confidence, and it does rock our, our plans and all of it. And, we're literally shaking in our boots sometimes. But
for instance, in the case of your colleague and friend, so he has trained himself and built his confidence, and now he feels, in his comfort zone when teaching. So because he has done it so many times. So that's it. That's, I think, when it comes to confidence, like, we need to make a difference between, like, when we lack confidence, for instance. So it's because of something that I have never done, or haven't done it enough times, or sometimes it might be deeper, but then it reflects other areas, aspects of my life as well. So and there are some comments in the chat room, and another question, I think, from Gabi. Where does this teacher confidence come from? Where does teacher confidence come from?
I think that's a good question. And I think that realistically, we have to answer that and say probably it's different for everyone, but you could sort of have a bit of a kind of umbrella approach to this to answer it. And I think it comes from, as Michael said, feedback, and from good, genuine sources, people who are trying to help you to progress and move forward. I think it comes from experience. When you are teaching, or when you're delivering a particular grammatical point or something, and it comes across well. It comes across well, I suppose, with confidence. I think that it's also, as I said in the input session, it's what you believe that you can deliver, and what you can create, what sort of atmosphere perhaps that you can create, or do you believe that you can encourage your students to pass exams or whatever it is. But again, that all comes from your past experience, and it comes from the feedback, because you've seen perhaps the students passing exams or whatever it might be. But I think that for me, certainly teacher confidence comes from an experience in the classroom that has been positive and reinforced and built upon. For me, that's where confidence comes from.
This reminds me of the point in your presentation, Suzanne, when you were talking about personal beliefs, and you asked us what we are good at.
Yeah.
And I'd like to turn it just upside down and ask you whether you think there is value in looking at what I don't believe I'm good at.
Yeah. I think I think that people try to just forget about the negative side of things, and I think that is quite a foolish strategy, because if you have a look at the things that you think you're not good at, you've got a couple of options. You can either try to understand why you're not great at it, and where your sort of your lack of confidence comes from in those areas. Or you can say, well, that's something that I'm not going to focus my energies on. If that makes sense. So one thing that I'm not great at is maths, and I suppose sort of spatial ability. For example, today I wanted to buy a tent for my dog. And it's true. And I said to my husband, you know, I said it's 60 by 60 by 70. And he said, what's that? Centimeters, inches, feet? What is that? And I don't know. Now, this is something that has been with me for, well, as long as I can remember, that trying to figure out what's a meter and what's, you know, it's not something that comes easily to me. And so it's something that I don't focus on. And so as a result, my confidence in this type of situation is not something. I wouldn't just buy a tent for my dog. I'd have to get my husband to measure it. And that's because even if I were to measure it, I would be, oh, hang on, was that inches or was that centimeters? Or I need to do it again now. And I have to do it 3 or 4 times. And so that's something that, you know, my focus I don't rely on my own. Yeah, I don't focus on things like that. I focus on the other things that I'm better at, perhaps, like teaching the present perfect.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, that might be the key. And the amazing thing is that whatever we focus on, that thing grows. And so you do not focus on that. So you are not that good at that because you haven't put that practice into that. Yeah. However, when it comes to teaching and you love it, so even though I'm not the most confident person in the world, but I love helping others, I love, you know, teaching, and then I will expose myself and step by step build and know more about the subject, this profession, and I will just step by step grow in confidence. So, and this is amazing because you can actually trace it in your brain. So our brain is not static as you know we used to believe. It's plastic actually, and by doing new things and repeating them, even after 1 hour of doing something new, changes in our brain can be traced, seen already. So this is amazing, and the more we practice, the more you know, the better we become at that. So that's the key, you know, in a sense. And now, so like Suzanne, you are a teacher, trainer, and managing director. So what do you do when you have someone who you can clearly see lacks confidence, self-confidence? What do you do about that? Like, actually, whose responsibility it is to address that, to work on that? Is it only the teacher's responsibility, or you feel responsible to step in and help them? So how do you address this?
I think that's an excellent question. I really do. And I think that it is fundamentally, it's everybody's responsibility. We work in an environment in the educational world that our whole mission is to educate and to advance and to promote our students and push them forward and help them achieve their goals. Now, whether that's, I don't know, whether that's about science or whether it's about teaching English or whatever it might be, that's the whole mission. Now, as a teaching establishment, I'm thinking here about my summer school, I couldn't possibly not extend that to my teachers also. So if I am trying to teach students English and I'm wanting them to achieve things and I want them to succeed and I'm setting them goals and I know that they're going to make it, then why would I not do that with my teachers also? At the same time, when I ask my students to, when I'm hoping that they will reach a goal, I ask them to study. Yeah, I ask them to do exercises, to take on responsibility for their own learning, as well as follow the path that I'm setting out. And I do that also with my teachers, that if there, you know, if there's something that perhaps in the environment that doesn't work for you, or if there's something in the training that you feel as if it should have been different, or if there's just something in the classroom, to go back to what we were saying before, your classroom persona that isn't quite gelled yet, then let's have a look at it and let's deconstruct that and let's work together. Again, as I said, you know, we weren't born confident teachers, and as you say very rightly, it is a sliding scale. So, you know, what day of the week is it, depending on where you are and what you're doing. And so you can't expect your teachers just to be, oh yes, absolutely, I'm 100% confident, that's fine, I'll go in and I'll do it. They've got to be, they're individuals and you've got to nurture them. So as academic director of the summer school, that's what I do. So I give them training and I observe them, and I swap with them and let them observe me, and we have feedback. It comes and goes, and it's a two-way process. And so for me, if I've got a teacher who's lacking confidence, I will do everything to build that confidence up. And not in a way that is fake or phony. It will be in a way that is real, and so that they can walk away from the summer experience and think, I got something from that. That's how I would do it.
And yes, this describes the school setting, and what can those people do, those teachers who are private tutors, for instance, and they do not have access to a director of studies or colleagues or, you know, other staff members around them. So what can
another very good question. For me, one of the best resources that we have is online. Talking about, you know, going on to even, you know, Facebook or Twitter, finding forums, finding people in the same situation that you're in, asking questions, or even, you know, I've actually had people ask questions, just sending me an email. What would you do about this? What do you think of that? You know, I'm happy to share. If I can possibly help, I'm going to help. So for me, it's I think there is definitely an element, if you're a kind of teacher working on your own, there is an element, I suppose, of taking a little bit more responsibility, because somebody's not going to notice perhaps that you need a little bit more pushing or a little bit more support in that area. So you might have to just say, okay, well, I need to ask this question. I'm going to go perhaps and find a forum or some online support, or just email somebody who has DOS perhaps in their job title or email title or something. I would very much encourage people, teachers in that situation, to reach out, because there's a lot of support online, a lot of help around.
Yeah, and these days we, you know, hear more and more about coaching besides teaching, and coaching is slightly different from teaching. So when, you know, we give more responsibility to our students, and so do you think that coaching would be more suitable for those who feel, I don't know, more nervous or lack confidence?
Yeah, again, I think you have to look at the individual. I think that coaching, yes, is obviously is very much about giving the responsibility and sort of taking ownership and being accountable for your own progress. Absolutely. Some people, though, don't feel as if that they are ready for that quite yet. So I think it's a very good thing and it's a very good approach. I think it very much depends on the individual.
Yeah, exactly. And what would you say to those, I often see people who, you know, when, let's say, a trainee in their, I don't know, early 20s, and who qualifies as a teacher, and then ends up teaching students who are older than themselves. And then the other end as well, who, you know, decide to take up teaching at a later stage in their lives, in their, I don't know, 50s or 60s. So, you know, this too old, too young issue. What would you advise or suggest or say to them?
Well, I think the too young or too old issues is not an issue. Honestly speaking, I think that certainly for me, I wouldn't not employ a candidate based on their age. As far as a teacher going in feeling like they're too young, all of their students are older than they are. Well, as I said to you, that's how my career started. I was 22. I was in Naples in Italy, and I went, there was two schools that I could have worked for, and I was chosen, so it wasn't my choice, but I was chosen to go to the business English school, which meant that the majority of my lessons were with people who were certainly 45 plus, so a good 20 years ahead of me. And I was terrified. And the first time you have to ask, well, in my eyes, an adult to be quiet is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. But you've got a choice, you know, and your choice is between the control of the class and the destiny of the class versus you taking that moment. And yeah, okay, sometimes it is all your confidence and just saying, okay, could we focus, please? Or however it is that you want to say, could we get back to the matter at hand? However it is you want to phrase it. But it's actually, it's sometimes it's about being brave. And I've been there. I have been there. And it's hard. But the first time you do it, it's a bit hard. The second time it gets easier and gets easier until eventually, yeah, telling 50-year-olds off, no problem. As far as older teachers are concerned, for me, they are full of experience, and it doesn't have to be in the classroom, but they're full of life experience. They're full of knowledge. Again, it doesn't have to be about teaching English. And what I love about older teachers is that they don't have any, at least fewer, they have fewer issues with classroom management because they know how to deal with those situations. So for me, there is no such thing as too young or too old. There's just different types of teachers.